The Williamsport Crosscutters 2023 Hot Stove Banquet was held at the Genetti Hotel in downtown Williamsport in front of another sold-out crowd. The event raised over $9,000 to benefit the programs of Sojourner Truth Ministries. One of our featured guests was ESPN Hall of Fame analyst Tim Kurkjian. Here's what Kurkjian had to say about this year's Hall of Fame vote, the new rules in Major League Baseball, and a lot more. Enjoy our hot stove interview with ESPN's Tim Kurkjian.
Yes, indeed. Tim, welcome for the third go-around with us. Thank you for taking the time to be here once again tonight. Congratulations, Tim Kurkjian, on your new name, Hall of Famer Tim Kurkjian.
So I found out I won this award. I was at the Harris Teeter grocery store at 9:30 in the morning when I got the call. I was dragging a rotisserie chicken through the self-scan item.
Like any Hall of Famer would.
When I got the call, and I was so moved that I started to cry right there in the middle of the grocery store. So the next morning, Johnny Bench, the greatest catcher of all time, called me on the phone at my house and said, "Tim, welcome to the club. You're one of us now."
Wow.
Now, let's be clear. I'm not one of them. I'm not in their club. They're players. I'm a writer. But the point was still well made. And then Johnny's voice softened greatly, and he said, "Tim, you know, it's moments like this that take you back to Little League." And I was just about ready to cry again. And he said, "And let's face it, you could still fit into a Little Leaguer's uniform."
For those of you who don't know, it was for meritorious contributions to baseball writing, the Baseball Writers Career Excellence Award. So, Tim Kurkjian, congratulations. Tell us just a little snippet about that weekend in Cooperstown last summer.
Well, on Sunday, for the real induction, when the players go in, I am on a bus going to the induction site. It's a 15-minute ride, and it's me and everyone else on the bus is a Hall of Famer. I can't even begin to tell you how great that was. And there's one seat left on the bus sitting right next to me, and this rather regal, elegant-looking gentleman looks at me and says, "Can I sit next to you?" And it was Sandy Koufax. So I spent 15 minutes talking to Sandy Koufax. And if I may, and this is a little self-serving, after I spoke, Johnny Bench, the same Johnny Bench, came up to me at the hotel there after I'm done and said, "Come with me." And he took me out on the veranda of the Otesaga Hotel overlooking the most beautiful lake you've ever seen. And he said, "I want you to sit down here, and I want you to look at the lake. And I don't want you to say a word for 1 minute. I want you to think about where you are, how you got here, and how many people helped get you here." And I sat next to the greatest catcher of all time and looked at that lake, and I almost started to cry again. And this is how it works. Johnny Bench does this for all the Hall of Fame players who make it. This time he did it for a writer, and I will never forget that for the rest of my life.
Amazing. Speaking of the Hall of Fame, the results of this year's Baseball Writers vote just happened a little while ago. Scott Rowland, former Philadelphia Philly, it will be inducted into the Baseball Hall of Fame. That was the only one from the writers' side. Fred McGriff is also going to be inducted. That was by the Contemporary Committee, I believe. So how do you feel about that? I know that we talked earlier, so I know that you share your vote, but not until after everything is announced. So share it with us tonight. Well, this will be the first time you've shared your Hall of Fame vote for this year.
Yes, so I voted for Scott Rowland and Jeff Kent and Todd Helton. I voted for Carlos Beltran and Gary Sheffield and Andrew Jones, and I voted for Billy Wagner. So I voted for 7 players this year, and I'm so happy that Scott Rowland got in for me, and this is just my list, not an official list. After Brooks Robinson and Nolan Arenado, he's the greatest defensive third baseman I've ever seen. And I always loved it that when he would hit a home run, he would put his head down and run around the bases faster than anyone in the league, meaning there was no raising the roof or anything else. I asked him about that once, and he just said, well, that's how I was taught to play when I was younger. And I'll never forget just how big he was and how nimble he was in the field. He could play the piano and move it, too.
How about that? Talk about head down running around at home run. I did that too for my one home run in senior league because I had never hit one over the fence. So after I hit it, man, my head was down and I was running. Then I couldn't believe that, it went over. So Dick Allen has fallen one vote short twice by the Golden Days Committee. Should he have a plaque in Cooperstown?
Yes, Dick Allen should be a Hall of Famer. Go back and look again at that rookie season that he had. It's one of the great rookie seasons of all time. Go back and look at those Philadelphia years. Go back and look at those White Sox years. And keep in mind, he played most of his career in the 60s when we didn't score a million runs and balls weren't flying out of the ballpark. He's one of the best hitters I've ever seen. He's one of the strongest men ever to play the game. And interestingly, his brother Hank once told me that Dick Allen was a better basketball player in high school than he was a baseball player. I found that astonishing. He was a great baseball player, and he should be in the Hall of Fame.
You see, no matter what baseball player you mention, Tim always has a story or anecdote about them, whether they played in the 50s or the 60s, the 70s, the 80s today. So, Tim, let's try it. I'm going to name some players, and you're going to give us an anecdote. We did not go over these players beforehand. God is my witness. We'll talk about some people who have maybe been here for a hot stove or familiar to the Crosscutters, etc. But let's start with Clint Hurdle.
Well, Clint Hurdle is a really interesting man, and I'll never forget at the batting cage in Pittsburgh once. I always ask guys in spring training, what'd you do during the off season? So I asked Clint Hurdle, so what'd you do in the off season? And he said, I went to Alaska and I drove sled dogs all the way across Alaska in the snow. And I wrote all of this because I'd never heard of a major league manager driving sled dogs across Alaska. That's about the last really fun conversation I had with Clint.
All right. I had the great honor and privilege to interview Rickey Henderson last summer. He was here in Williamsport for some Little League events. So, Rickey Henderson.
Well, Rickey Henderson's one of the 15 greatest players ever. He's the greatest leadoff man ever. And he was an interesting little guy. He broke so many records that he used to love to tip his cap every time he broke a record, which happened all the time. So he breaks a record, he's with the Mets, and he gets a standing ovation, and he tips his cap. Now they're going to start the game again, and with Rickey, the steal sign was a very simple steal sign. Cookie Rojas, the third base coach, would just clap his hands like this. So play has begun. Rickey looks over at Cookie Rojas, the third base coach, who claps his hand, and Rickey tips his cap to the third base coach.
How about, he was here, I think he was here 3 times too. Announcer, Phillies announcer Harry Kalas.
Well, Harry Kalas had one of the most distinctive voices of all time, but the only story you need to know about Harry Kalas is when the Phillies won the National League pennant in 1993, the whole team was down in the clubhouse, and they would not start the post-game celebration until Harry Kalas, the broadcaster, came down from the broadcast booth, sang the song, and that's when the players began to celebrate. They would not do it without Harry Kalas, a broadcaster, and that speaks directly to how revered he was in the Phillies organization.
One more, we're going to go, this has nothing to do with Williamsport, but we're going to go back, 60s, 70s. Jay Johnstone. He played for the Phillies for a while, I think, too.
Yeah, he was a complete lunatic, Jay Johnstone, but one of the all-time flakes, but he could really hit left-handed. And he played in the movie The Naked Gun. If you go watch that movie again, Jay Johnstone is playing in that movie, and I believe he bats right-handed in that movie, even though he was a left-handed hitter. There are many Jay Johnstone stories to share, but I'm not sure I could do it here.
So, truthfully, we did not go over any of these, and I want to give you one more, I guess, now. Mickey Morandini, former Cutters manager and Phillies great.
Well, he had an unassisted triple play, and Rich Donley was on the field, was a coach at the time, and he swears that Mickey and the rest of the infield said, "Okay, boys, let's get 3 on this play." And the next play is the line drive to Mickey Morandini, who got an unassisted triple play.
How about that? Son of a gun. I could do that all day with you, but we'll move on. We'll stick with the Phillies, though. How surprised were you at their run last year?
I didn't see it coming. I didn't even think they were going to make the playoffs, but I will tell you this. Once the Phillies got in, there was something going on with that team. They have a chemistry on that team, a camaraderie on that team, which sounds corny, but it's real, especially in baseball when the game is so difficult to play. They reminded me of a college baseball team. They were not the most talented team in the postseason, but they played in a way together and everything else that really, really opened some eyes. And Rob Thompson, the manager, had an awful lot to do with that. He came in and told everyone to relax. That team relaxed and played really, really well. And with Trey Turner at shortstop every day this year, Phillies are going back to the playoffs for sure.
The story of the offseason, I would say, would be Carlos Correa. What can you tell us about that saga?
Well, I've covered baseball for 43 years, and I've never seen anything approaching what Carlos Correa did. He was supposed to, we thought, stay with the Twins, and then he didn't, and he left for the Giants, and then they didn't like the medicals, so he left, and then he signed with the Mets in a stunning turnaround that happened at 3 o'clock in the morning. That's when it hit Twitter and all the news cycles, and then it didn't work out with the Mets, also because of health concerns, and he ended up back with the Twins. So I've never seen anything quite like that, and he started his press conference with, "This has been quite a journey," and that is a massive understatement.
It was I think it just came out today, yesterday or today, that the owner of the Los Angeles Angels, who had the team up for sale, now decided he wasn't going to sell the team. It leads us to Shohei Ohtani. Does he stay with the Angels, or does he move away from the Angels in one way, shape, or form during this season or after it?
Right. I think he wants to stay with the Angels. Obviously, they're going to give him whatever he wants to stay, meaning they're going to give him a $500 million deal to stay. But if they're not going to be a winning team, then he is going to move on because he wants to win. So this is an incredibly important year for the Angels to try to get some traction here, make the playoffs, and show Ohtani this is where you need to be in the future, because there's never been a player quite like him. We've never seen a guy pitch like, we've never seen anyone throw 100, hit a baseball that is thrown at 100 miles an hour, and be able to run like he can. To me, that's the most impressive part about him, is watching him go from home to third on a triple. That kid can fly, and the Angels are going to do whatever it takes to keep him. However, if they recognize he's going to leave via free agency, he's going to be traded in July of 2023, and wait till you see the haul they're going to get for him.
You're not kidding. Lots of rules changes coming for Major League Baseball in 2023. Want to get your take on them. First, a ban on shifts. They need to have 2 players on each side of second base. What's your opinion, and what have you heard from the players?
Well, first off, the banning of the shift, I think, is a good idea. Look, I'm 66 years old. I really don't want to change much in baseball. The game is so great. But it is time to take a look at the shift. I mean, we have too many strikeouts. The league batting average is 240. We've lost the value of the hit. So just look at a shift that we see every day. Joey Gallo comes to the plate, and there are three guys lined up on the right side of the infield, and he looks at it and goes, well, I can't hit it through that because there are three guys there. So I'm going to try to hit it over. And that's where all the strikeouts, home runs, and walks come from, and that's not a healthy situation for the game. Now, when Joey Gallo or any big lefty or right-handed hitter comes up and he sees all four infielders are on the dirt, two are on the right side, two are on the left side of second base, they look up the middle and they say, hey, I can get a hit on a ground ball up the middle. I can hit a hard ground ball to the right side and get a hit. We need more hits in the game. We need more action in the game. We need fewer home runs in the game. Clint Hurdle told me 10 years ago, you know, Tim, there used to be a day you hit a hard ground ball up the middle. It was a hit every time. Not anymore. Let's hope it's a hit a little more often in 2023, and I think that will improve the game.
Pitch timers. I think 15 seconds when the bases are empty, 20 seconds with men on base to throw that next pitch.
It's not going to be easy, but I think it's worth a try also. On Sunday Night Baseball many years ago, it's been a while, Josh Beckett, we put a stopwatch on Josh Beckett. He took 53 seconds, 53 between pitches. Later in the game, he took 55 seconds between pitches, and then he took 58 seconds. That's way too much. Let's get the game going, and we can have more action this way, less dead time. It's not going to be easy for the pitchers. It's not going to be easy for the hitters. But I think it's time to see if it works on the big league level.
Along with that, speeding things up, 30 seconds between batters as well. Maximum 2 pickoff attempts.
Well, this is going to change the running game because, you know, guys will throw over there time and time again. Jim DeShays threw over to first base 333 times one season, which is just absurd. So I think it's going to change the running game, and I think pitchers are going to say, well, I can't throw over there twice because if they know I can't go over a third time, they're just going to take off running. So we're looking to get more speed in the game. We're looking to get more athleticism in the game, and I think this is a way that might work, but the pitchers are not going to like it, nor should they. There is a real art to holding that guy close at first, and part of that art is going to be gone with this new rule.
We have a ton of questions from people here tonight, but before we get to that, Tim, it's been said that imitation is the sincerest form of flattery, and if true, then you must be flattered beyond belief because players love to imitate you. Growing up, impersonator Rich Little was a guy that, you know, one of my favorite performers. I love to mimic a lot of voices, but I can't really do justice to yours. But check the video screen. There's a few people who can.
Tim Kurkjian, ESPN, talking with Niger Morgan here. Thanks, Aaron.
I tell you what, Truckee, since 1905, we haven't seen a starting staff with this much depth. It's absolutely incredible. We got not just 5 guys on starting rotation. They got 6, they got 7, and even 8. These guys are all unbelievable.
Well, I talked to Jason Hayward's mom's uncle's cousin, and she told me that he's feeling really good today.
Let me tell you, I found a kid by the name of Anthony Renato. 2010 supplemental first-round pick out of Louisiana State University. Won the national championship. 6'7" righty. This kid has got all the tools and the makings to be a big league pitcher.
And we talked about the implat stat that we all know about. And for those that don't know it, that's innings minus plate appearances from left-handed hitters with pants up. And this is only for singles and triples. We know doubles and home runs don't factor in, but I checked all of baseball in recent history, and you were second overall.
Oh, really? I didn't know
That's
that.
very good. That's very good. This is Tim Kurkjian, ESPN.
Who was the first guy to do that? Come up to you and imitate you.
That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Look, I have this ridiculous voice and all. It's just the way it is. If you didn't notice Mr. Dillard there, he was actually he was actually crouching down while he was imitating me so he could also be my height. To answer the question, J.P. Arancibia was the first guy to do this. It's like a 12-minute story to explain how it happened. I'm not going to go there. But before I knew it, the entire Toronto Blue Jays team in the clubhouse is circled around J.P. Arancibia while he imitates me. And 60 people are laughing like you cannot believe. So a year later, I asked J.P. Arancibia, please tell me that you do other impersonations. Tell me that you could do Jack Nicholson. And he goes, no, I can only do you.
It's awesome. It's awesome. They're out there. Check them out online. Should we get to some of your questions for Tim? Yeah, we've got a lot. Let's see. Best player in baseball right now?
Mike Trout is still the best player in baseball right now. His neck is this big. He weighs 235 pounds and runs like a deer. I've never seen, other than Willie Mays, I'm not sure I've ever seen a better all-around complete player than Mike Trout. But this is how much of a lunatic this guy is in a good way. He was in batting practice a few years ago in Tempe in spring training, and he told Raul Ibanez, he said, I'm going to hit a home run into that trash can out there beyond the left center field fence. It wasn't a dumpster. It was just like a green trash can that you see at the park. And like 11 pitches later, he hit a home run into the trash can. This is how everything works in Mike Trout's life. They played a game in spring training with Raul Ibanez that if you hit during batting practice, that screen over there, you get 1 point. That screen over there, you get 2 points, whatever. They play the first day, and Trout loses 6-3. And he is furious that in this stupid made-up game, he lost. He comes in the next day and says to Ibanez, we're playing that game again today. And Ibanez goes, no, I don't want to play. And Trout says, we're playing. And he beat Ibanez 40-4 because he was so upset at losing in anything. He's the best player in the game today, and he has been for the last 10 years.
Will there be an electronic strike zone in MLB's future?
Yes, and that's going to be sooner rather than later, and I'm sorry. I've made this point. I'm 66 years old. We need a human being behind the plate. We need the human element in the game. Let's face it, the replay system that we have now, it's been in use for 10 years, and it's still flawed. And now we're going to add more technology. Sorry, let's just keep the humans involved. We don't need an electronic strike zone. And I am so far in the minority on this, it won't be more than 5 years, and it'll be operating in the big leagues.
What era of baseball do you like best?
Well, I would like to go back to the 20s. I would like to go watch Babe Ruth play in his prime and see what that was like. I would like to go watch Walter Johnson pitch in his prime to see what that was like. If I could do anything, I would go back to 1921 and watch Walter Johnson pitch against Babe Ruth. I think that would be the coolest thing ever. And by the way, if you don't know, I went to Walter Johnson High School in Bethesda, Maryland, named after the greatest pitcher of all time. I played baseball and basketball there, not the point. I wrote for the school paper. It was called The Pitch. I did some work for the yearbook. It was called The Wind-Up. So I went to a school named after the greatest pitcher of all time. I always felt there was a little destiny involved, that's where I went to school.
What has been the most surprising off-season move this year?
The most surprising move, I'm not sure there were any stunning moves that happened in this offseason. Well, the Correa thing was the most surprising because that shouldn't have happened. I just think what the Mets did, it shouldn't have surprised us, but it should worry all of us to some degree that the Mets at one point were going to have their payroll go well over $300 million and border on $400 million with luxury taxes and everything else. And God bless Steve Cohen, the owner, if that's what he wants to do and bring a winner to New York. But I'm just not sure it's healthy when one team has a $300 million payroll and another team has a $30 million payroll. It's not particularly good for the game.
He is one of the true greats in the world of baseball and sports media and just a really special dude. Hall of Famer, Tim Kurkjian.